by the neck of the jersey.
Right, that's partially what I was telling you.
Everybody wants to stand for the pledge of allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call meeting order. Roll call.
Okay, Mayor Westergaard.
Yes.
Frank.
Yes.
Moeller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Bolton. Yes. Beckman.
Yes.
Gail, we're gonna put you up front if you'd like to present.
Sure. I get it right off the bat, huh?
Yes. You rate.
I rate?
Yes, you do.
Well, thank you. You guys know about the park board, and I was elected park board chairperson, at the last meeting. We met on the 18th, and unfortunately, not all of our people were there. But after a lot of discussion, we were trying to come up with a project that we thought we could ask for a budget. Not a huge budget, but something that we thought would make a difference. The campground playground that borders Crescent Park Drive in the campground, the old metal swings and that climbing thing, we thought it would be nice if we could update it. Maybe put in some new swings, maybe like a rock climber or one of those little crane diggers. I know that the area isn't real big, and unfortunately Sandy was not able to be with us, and I think she could have given us some input as to space requirements. But what we were thinking after we did some looking online at different things, we were thinking that if we could ask for approximately $7,500 for the budget and spend it on that area of the park, that we thought it would be well worth the money spent. So basically, we are proposing to ask for $7,500 for our budget this year. In regard to the pickleball court, that is already ongoing, and as it stands right now, it sounds like most of it will be covered with grants. So that is another project that's in the works, but just to update that, playground is kind of what we're talking about. We're gonna be meeting again in March, and we have the date and everything set, and then we'll go ahead at that time and discuss if we are, if we do get the $7,500, what we can do for that area. So, that's all, the reason I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Well,
you.
thank
Thanks,
you, we
Gail.
appreciate it.
Well, I got a question.
Okay, what's your question?
On the pickleball courts,
Yes,
have you, the park board talked about locations at all besides uptown?
we have, but with much, we didn't have everybody there, of course, but with much discussion, it sounded like they did not want it up by the school.
And what was the reasoning?
The reasoning, I think, is because of all the kids.
I guess I thought.
Yeah, and I didn't have,
I
we
guess I
didn't have
thought
the
pickleball court was
people.
for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. I think they thought it was pretty far for the campers to go. Also,
But they didn't want it in the campground.
no.
There's
No,
no room there anyway.
there's no room.
So wasn't they talking initially about you eliminating one of the volleyball courts and putting the pickleball court
They
in
were,
there?
initially, they were talking about that, but it was changed because I think she has other plans now for that area.
Okay.
So,
And are they still talking on the other side of the elevator?
yes, we did discuss it, Tammy was there, we discussed the fact, we were concerned about how those trucks are turning around in there without getting onto the city property. So we were concerned that maybe, we might have to move them down, or not necessarily down, but closer to the street on McClure there, so they don't get drove over, but,
And there's concerns with that then too, about where some underground utilities are through there.
yes,
So
yes.
it would fit in there, but it would be on the west part of the property is where it would.
And I guess my concern is, there's no facilities there,
Yeah.
no bathrooms, no lighting now, whereas if you'd put, what's wrong with putting it in the city park?
Oh
We
my
have so
goodness.
little green space right
Yeah, it
now.
has to do with green space.
The open spaces crowd would be up here in droves.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, people are using the shelter house and they bring their pickleball racket with them and it's there, you know, just like Sac City, the shelter house is right there.
Yeah.
It's greatly used. I mean, you move it a block away and it's not gonna get used quite as much. The
But it is
facilities
only
aren't
a
there,
block from the bathrooms.
and it's, what, 4 blocks from the campground?
Yeah.
Is it,
That's why I've been.
and not near as
think that-
visible.
Originally, the park was discussed.
Yeah.
East of the
Original.
We
basketball
did
court.
initially, and we were concerned about using up the green space.
Right.
But isn't that what I mean, you're
Yes
using
and no.
your facility, I agree, I agree we need green space,
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
I mean, I can remember playing baseball in the middle of that park and
Oh.
the net's gone or the backstop is gone and,
Yeah.
I mean.
We discussed soccer at one time, soccer
Okay,
nets.
I just,
Yeah.
my concern, I guess, is
Yeah.
no facilities and.
We
and
talked about
you're
if
away
we-
and-
We talked about if we get enough money, we would like to put some canopies and stuff up for shade. So, depending on what. You know,
What
how
other
many
grants you
things.
can get?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and right now, I brought my notes along. We have, with your gracious offer of money, it's gonna be we have 25,000 from the city, and we have $25,000, SAC endowment. And then Connie Asen is working on a Wellmark grant, and I can't remember the other name of the other
The
grant. It's-
Wellmark one will be a big one.
It will, yeah, so we think it'll pretty well be paid for. That would be the concrete slab, the plain surface, the posts and netting and fence would equal about 100,000, 366. So, and we have $50,000 of that already, so,
Well, the footings haven't been dug yet, but it's
no.
something to look at.
Yeah, I mean, we're meeting again in March and we'll have more people there hopefully, you know, so maybe we can discuss location again if, you know, if you guys are concerned about that, so.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank you,
letting
Gail.
me come. Have a
I
good
say,
evening.
have that trip.
Just one other thing in regards to budget requests, and this is not related to the parks at all. It was the first couple of pages of the council packet, was a request that we'd received from Council of Governments Housing from Region 12. And that was a request that the city would fund $1,000 for the next budget year. And so that entity assists with housing in the region, and there's a map in there that shows that it's been used, and in this case, it showed one time in Lakeview, and with the Housing Trust Fund, the city has utilized Region 12 housing in lots of other different ways too, so. Anyway, just a request is for $1,000 to be used for match for the grant, and we had made that contribution for the past couple of years.
It's been a good investment. We have a motion to fund that.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second it. Roll call.
Now, what was the motion?
Motion to do the $1,000.
Oh,
Yeah.
Isn't that for 22, 23?
it is, yeah, that would just be a budget issue for next year.
No, okay. I thought that's what you wanted.
We'll discuss it during budget time, if we can, if we rescind that motion, we'll just discuss it during budget time.
See you, Gail.
See ya, thank you.
All right.
Say,
Okay, we want to talk about participation in the housing development.
Yeah. So. We're getting more information on these, potential housing developments, and you see on the packet on page 6 and 7 is information on the Hankey/Brotherton, development there. You've seen that before as far as the proposed layout and the proposed, development costs. Page 8 is that same, the same information that we had seen before here too, about somehow starting to work towards an equitable way to have some again, be equitable amongst all of the housing developments that were pending. So this shows the estimates to install street and water, and then ultimately a box at the bottom breaks it down on either a per unit cost or a per acre cost, typo on that. So that you can have some type of a way to compare site to site to site. It looks,
I got a couple questions.
sure.
So I studied these this afternoon a little bit. The two that are pending right now, which would be the Hankey, Brotherton, and the Lakewood Partners one. Both of them have in their estimates, you know, that we're putting in there, one has a rain garden, the other one has a, what do they call it here, a detention pond.
Mm-hmm.
Are these things really necessary?
You know, as far as developing right around the lake,
I know they're nice, don't get me wrong, but are they necessary?
we do have code that requires them.
We do. So
As
any
far as
development has to have a retention pond?
Low impact development has to have some type of, has to do with the amount of water entering and leaving the premises.
Okay. Spend it all like it is. So we have a code that it has to have that.
Yeah, now it's then largely up to the developer of, as far as how they would go ahead and make that happen.
Well, okay, so the reason I'm asking that, on the Brotherton one, that's $100,000 that they got put in there for that.
Right, yep,
You know, and Lakewood's only got $10,000 in there for theirs.
okay.
So we need to figure out our code, what the bare minimum is, depending on how much we're funding of certain projects of that. The other question I got is, the Brotherton one is a 25 foot, or 25 lot addition, but yet in some of the stuff in their, cost estimates, for example, water service, 1-inch polyurethane, they have 48 of them in there.
Yeah.
So
They give,
we're developing 25 lots, but we're putting 48 of them in there for the future?
so that they're developing the south, you know, having stubs in for the south side.
Whose is it?
White Chevy pickup.
White Chevy pickup.
I don't drive one up.
Yeah, they're not graded yet. Okay, so
Now,
that's for future then.
Yeah, when I did my cost, though, that there it says, the water system cost that I used for the analysis, I used 24 services on page 8. 24 connections.
So is the rest of the figures off of these then? For both of these?
Yeah.
Because.
They used the same per unit figures then.
Yeah, because both of these don't match. That's the downside of it, because they're two different engineering firms. So
Yeah.
how do we, moving forward, how do we really come up with a set thing? Because we can't go off of what the engineer studies say. Correct?
Or,
They got more water coming on Hankey than they do on the other one, too, that we have to
Well,
filter out.
I'm talking, even if you start comparing the road cost. When you start comparing the two different ones, and I don't know if you guys have done that, when you compare these two different ones, Lakewood Partners and Brotherton's, hardly anything matches up for cost. So it depends on what engineering firm they're using. And here we're trying to decide what we can come up with when we don't have standard figures.
That's necessarily apples to apples.
But a street's a street,
Right.
so per square foot, per square foot.
yeah, you're right, I'm just looking at their,
So you're suggesting that we,
Well, I'm trying to figure out how, when moving forward here on this stuff, I mean, yeah, I can go to my engineer and say the city's gonna help participate at a certain percentage of what this is gonna cost, elevate it. There we go. And if you don't think that ain't being done in this world today, you're wrong. So somehow, the city, us as the city, we have to figure out how to have an even keel on what we're doing when we're paying for stuff.
yeah, I get,
Follow what I'm
yeah, I
saying?
understand what you're saying.
I don't know, I don't have the answer to get there yet, but it's a concern of mine.
Because when you're looking at any of my numbers for analysis purposes, it just takes the numbers from the engineering study
That they provide. Right, so,
What we do for one, we gotta do for the other. So much per acre.
no, I don't know, I don't think that's an accurate statement either.
I think that's the only way to go is by the acre, that way it's, everybody gets the same fair, whether you put 20 homes in this spot or 20, 50, it doesn't make a difference.
I do think it makes a difference.
Well, that-
I mean, I'm just telling you my opinion. I mean, that's what we're discussing, I guess, right? Our opinions.
It all comes down to how much money we got.
Well, that's the next key, you know.
Guess we're not doing nothing then.
Well, in what situation, I mean, look at what, for example, the landing, we didn't do anything with streets out there,
No way. Yeah, put them in.
That's true, yeah, we did not.
you know. I guess until we get something standardized, I think that's something to follow for right now, that's what we did for one. I mean, that's just, I'm just talking out loud and looking at stuff until we can get something standardized on cost.
So if we break the landing down, what would be, what would it look like?
We did the rain garden. is what we did.
Well, I mean, that was done with, that, however was done with the
That's our effort.
SRF money. We don't have that right now.
Right.
So that's out of the picture.
We have to take it from somewhere else if we want to do the
Well,
same.
if we wanted to do it, yeah.
If we want to. Yep.
So if you break the landing down to what Dell is suggesting, what would be the cost, like the street, the sewer and water we put in? And that was really it, right? If-
Yeah, but we did not do any street out there. You know,
Okay.
we put in the water system, and we put in that big rain garden across the front. But that was all done through the SRF program.
How long are we responsible for that retention pond deal, or whatever
It's-
you wanna?
I'm gonna tell you 20 years.
And then the landowner takes over?
No, then we just lose responsibility from the grant. It's always in the public right of way. I mean, it's,
But, I mean, we got public right of ways all through town, and the city don't take care of them.
sure, you know,
I mean, they do out around Crescent Park Drive, but, you know, all the parking here in town, it's the homeowners. So, I just wondered how long we're responsible for it.
yeah. And I guess all that I'd tell you is, again, related to the use of the funds was 20 years.
Let's back up here a little bit. Brothertons are here, and they made a proposal to us that they're asking for 1.9 million. I'm gonna make this pretty simple, and I'm gonna make a motion, we do not fund this at 1.9 million, and we come up to some other type of agreement. I wanna partner with them, but not at 1.9 million.
I don't think you need a motion, we just gotta go that direction, because we can't afford 1.9.
Well, I know they want answers so they can move forward, and so they can come up with something, I'm assuming that's why you're here anyway. But 1.9 million for us to do that, and this is just me talking as a council member, in all honesty, then I think we could spend 1.9 million better served elsewhere that brings a faster return back to the city. I'm just being honest with you and putting my city council hat on. Would I love to see it develop? Absolutely. But 1.9 million is out of the question today, in my opinion. That's where I stand, I don't know where everybody else stands.
And we certainly want to partner with developers in the
Correct.
town, of some sort, we get.
Of some sort, but,
Yeah,
but
but
this,
1.9 is a little high, yeah.
yeah, I guess that's my point.
Yeah,
And that's what you guys are looking for tonight, right?
Well, we're gonna need an answer of what it is gonna be before the 14th of March.
14th of March is a yes or no on
Yeah.
our end,
Right.
whether we go forward at all. But we actually need an answer from you guys sooner than that, so then we can give our answer on the 14th.
Right.
And that's our deadline.
So then we need to put our deadline a little bit sooner so that we can get these
Get it
guys
to
an
these guys.
answer.
Yeah, we gotta.
And they can move forward.
And I think
with
you
what
guys
they
can
need to
see
do.
where we're coming from with everything going on. We're trying to figure out, I think that's what we're trying to figure out, anyway, a standard form on how we can partnership with each development going on in the town, because we wanna be a partner with it. But, you know, what just for example, we'll use the three that I can think of, the landing, yours, and the Lakewood Partners. They're all three way off, they're not even close to each other on being equitable as the same.
Couple things that you got going, I said you got going. In your specs for streets, you've been talking about streets a lot. You've got different options for streets. We chose the most expensive option to explore, to put that street in, because essentially you guys, this town will own that street when it's all said and done, right? It'll become yours. I'm assuming the landing is the same way. You know, the engineers that we talked to designed that street on this, what reflects on this pricing, the best way to design that street for longevity of the street. You guys have had issues in the past where you've had, construction companies come in and just do the bare minimum on your streets, and you ran into issues and lawsuits and all that, you had to.
Totally agree.
Right, so I didn't wanna take shortcuts when doing this. I wanted to do the best street, the best way known possible. So, the landing over there, they simply just put that street right over top of the existing compacted virgin soil. Every engineer I talked to said, absolutely not, that's the worst thing you can do. But it meets your spec, you know, it absolutely meets your spec. So, this 1.9 that's on there, I showed on that sheet, it shows a 1.4 is what the projected total cost of the construction, the 1.9, that's with engineering fees and all that, which I think is out of line as well. I mean, the 1.4 was closer for an initial estimate, but some of that, what we're doing in there, isn't the bottom of the barrel. I mean, there's a difference when I sell, you guys all know we sell materials, sell doors. I mean, I can sell you a hollow core door that's gonna do the same thing that a solid core is, but which one's gonna last longer? You know, that solid core door is gonna be much better, much like this street. So, my point with that is, there's things that we can do to cheapen it up if you wanna cheapen it up, but how do you wanna look at it? Do you wanna look at it for the longevity of the property, or do you want a short term? The other thing that the mayor mentioned here about, well, I think we need to just have a one size fits all, I don't agree with that either. I mean, I don't look at that with anything I do as far as, well, I'm gonna stick $100,000 into this and I'm gonna get 10, or I'm gonna stick $500,000 into that and I'm gonna get 10 back. No, I want my return to be better. I mean, when you have an investment, which this is an investment that this town is gonna make in these projects, you know, which investment brings you the greater return, or a bigger return, or a quicker return? Somehow you gotta think of it like that. So it's not a, you know, one size fits all type of deal in my opinion.
I agree, and you know, you're talking about, we'll talk about the street, but you talked about just a second ago, and you went to the top of the line, and then our other proposal is actually more expensive than yours. And that's what I'm saying, when we got this information over the weekend and we start comparing it, us as a city council, we've gotta come up with something standardized, because yours is the top of the line, but yet it's less than this other one.
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
Correct.
You make a good point with your engineers. I mean, one engineer's gonna give you an estimate at this dollar amount, and another engineer might spec out something different that gives you another, you know, amount.
Right, and right now, we're trying to prepare, or present back to the developers based on what their engineers are giving us, and come up with something standard, and I don't see how we can do that with the information we're given yet today. But yet, I still wanna try and get something back to you guys as soon as possible on what we can.
That would be the bigger question that we would need answered is, what direction do we need to go next to?
Down.
What's that?
Down.
Down, correct, but I mean, like, I can't go to 5 different engineers and ask them, hey, will you, you know.
No, but they're, as you know, as well as anybody, you guys are businessmen just like we are, sitting up here, we're running the city as a business and you're running your development as a business. There's gotta be something to come to terms. We'd like to be able to come to terms with you. I know it's got a cash flow for you, but it's also got a cash flow for us.
That's the only way any good business partnership works.
Correct, and
you're
it's gotta
right.
be a win-win-win.
Yeah.
And at this 1.9 or 1.4, it's not a win-win-win. That's my opinion. I'm only one of 5. I don't know what the other 4.
I don't know how you answer this question either, I mean, but that'd be where, at what point, you know, we have a number that, you know, it cash flows for us.
Right.
You have to give us a number it cash flows for you.
Right.
You know, that, you need to come up with your number that this is where we have to be in order for this to work for us. If we can get that number to meet your number, then it works for all of us. So that's what we really need.
I mean, I think that's a great starting point for us to come back and collectively try and come up with that. And that might be the process we take with each different development, instead of trying to do it per acre or per unit. It's a, what type of house is gonna be there, projected to be there, how soon it's projected to be there, and then what are the projected returns for us to look at as a whole, and what expenses do we have moving forward?
And I guess that's the way I look at, you know, when we did this one, one of the biggest things, problems that we have, and we have that in Wall Lake too, housing. You know, we don't have adequate housing, and and to make that housing affordable, so in any city, they have incentives for developers to develop property in most respects. Because of our housing situation, I think the city does have to have some skin in the game if we're gonna be serious about adding in some housing in our community. And if the taxes from that housing development will pay over a 10 to 20 year period, I guess I'm okay with that, because the need is there. I guess that's how I looked at these projects. So, you know, no, we don't have the money hanging on the trees or anything, but if we have to pay a 2 or 3% interest, we better be able to pay that off somewhere in that time period. I guess is the way I look at it. Maybe 20 years is too long. I don't know. I don't know what other cities do in that respect, but.
You talk about the sorry, I keep talking about. You talk about the interest rate. That's something that you know. Obviously, we've talked to our financial institutions and stuff, and with you guys being this city municipality and stuff. According to what my guys have been telling me, you guys can get a lot better interest rate than what we can when you go to bond that project. You know, if I could go to bond it for 0.5% interest right now, I mean, that makes a hell of a world of difference, but I can't, you know, but you guys can. You know, 0.5% might be a stretch, but my guys are telling me 3/4 is probably within reach on a number, at that number that Dale was just mentioning, you know, a higher number like that, and then you get that down lower, maybe your interest rate would be a little bit higher, but, you know, that's where it takes both you guys and us to make something work, to work together on it.
Dale, have you got any idea how we could source that? I mean, do we go with an outside source to come up with this number? Or?
I don't have that answer right now, Whitey. I just come across this afternoon and thought, it started bringing up red flags, and it's like, wow, we're trying to figure out how to partner with these people, and I wanna partner with as many as we can, but when you've got everything all over the table on this stuff, and they just bring a proposal, and we're trying to base numbers off these proposals, I don't have that answer, but I think we need to look into it. And, you know, I'm actually looking for what was the first council meeting when you guys were here and sent your proposal to us, remember?
I don't know, shit, we've been to too many now.
You've only been to 3!
You just got on.
And he's been to 6.
I think Dave's right. I agree with you too. I think you need to look at it, on a payback period too. I mean, if the city could loan that out and get that back in 20, 25 years, you know, I think that's a great deal.
Absolutely.
You know, if we could, if us sitting here, if the city would say, we'll give you guys the tax revenue and the utilities revenue off for 25 years, we wouldn't ask for a damn dime, because we wouldn't need it.
So
But we don't get it.
So is that a proposal you're making?
I've already asked that question.
Yeah.
25 years is a long time, if you ask me.
Yeah, but, and the other thing is,
With the
we've sat in
money
enough of these
invested from us?
meetings too now. I mean, we realize that you do have a lot going on. You got a lot, you're being pulled a lot of different directions, and you got not just housing asking for money, but we don't wanna be penalized for being, you know, the last ones to the table, because one thing we think we've got is, our intent is, if things work out, is to be something fairly affordable. And I'm not gonna pick on East Shore Landing, but I am gonna pick on East Shore Landing, Yeah, if he put his streets in, that's great. But how many people sitting here can go out and pay $120,000 for a lot and you gotta buy two? And you haven't put a spade in the ground? I don't call that affordable housing. The time you spent $240,000, you better have most of that house out of the ground and getting ready to move into. So that's what we wanna try and do. Yeah, we're not on the lake. We got a lake, we got a lake view, not on the lake. But we're also not charging on the lake prices, hopefully, if we can get this to work out. But we can't do it ourselves. That's why we gotta get partnered up with somebody.
And the city needs the housing,
So
so it's.
is there anything through the League of Cities that somebody could give us a, I don't know, formula or something to?
Yeah, really nothing jumps to mind right now. Because when you do that and you start comparing yourself against other communities, then you're comparing, your circumstances among those other communities, knowing that the circumstances aren't gonna be the same.
We've talked to a few other city officials in the surrounding area too, and we get that blank stare, like, you're trying to do what? Like, they just don't have anything comparable to what we're asking that you could even, Denison was the closest, and Denison, we got told down there by one of their community board members that, they would come in and they'd put all the infrastructure in. So, that's the only comparable we have, but the size of that development, I don't have a clue what they were talking about, 3 house lot, or 3 lots of a development, that's a different story than what we're asking for. The other thing you mentioned about, the 25 hookups, and yes, the idea is that we would put all the infrastructure in for that south side as well. With our purchase agreement, we have first right of refusal for that south side. We've already had discussions on coming to an agreement on price to buy that as this goes on, to just do it all at once. That wasn't on the table originally, it is on the table now. It kind of got, excuse me for overuse of the term, but it got tabled in our discussion for the fact that we need to come to agreeable terms here before we really move forward. So, but it only makes sense to put all the infrastructure in from the beginning, so you're not having to do it later, not having to tear up streets or put anything in after the fact. So,
Whatever goes in the end run, you guys own it. When it's done, it's yours. Infrastructure's yours, not ours anymore. We don't,
And
We
the
just
other part of that risk is how fast is the building gonna take place?
it's a good question. Since this came out at that meeting here, 3-4 weeks ago, we've had about 7 inquiries for different lots over there already.
January 3rd. Meeting
I mean,
there, first day.
Mr.
So-
Statistician here.
That's in addition to what we plan to do ourselves,
Right.
So, it's very
So
encouraging,
You're talking about putting some spec houses up then, and
yes.
how many?
if everything went together in a perfect world and, you guys fully fund us like we think you're going to, and then we get there going. But and once that was ready, we'll probably be the first ones to put a spade in the ground. We're gonna pop something in there right away, because with housing developments, I've seen it in the ones we've had over there, bare ground sits bare. As soon as you plant a seed, everybody else thinks, now I can build too. And we're gonna plant the seed as soon as we get going. So,
Well, obviously, we're not ready to make a decision tonight, but we're putting stuff together, but it's been very good feedback and communication back and forth, if that makes sense. And I'm gonna speak for myself very highly, we wanna be able to partner with you, we just gotta come to figure out what that partnership looks like.
no, we appreciate you guys considering it. Like I said, I know you guys, I've seen what's being thrown at you from every angle, and, it's not fun to sit on that side of the table. I've been on that side of the table too, and I know what you're going against, but we think we've got a pretty good deal. We think it's good for the community.
Definitely will be.
I got one question that the last meeting kinda perked me up, and Jeff said that you can't get transformers. I mean, if this was gonna go, are we gonna be able to get transformers out there for our infrastructure, or it'll be a year before you can do it? Cause if we gotta sit on that for a year, I don't wanna pay interest for a year on stuff we can't even use.
I can't buy one right now, you could not order one for 2022.
you had mentioned that you had enough to do the Outlot 20 and the East Shore
And
Landing.
that cuts us pretty thin if we do something in the campground like we did last year, or something like that happens. I can't
Is
leave
it-
myself high and dry
How
for,
many did we send in for, to be rebuilt?
they got me on the schedule to come and pick them up, and it's a 6-month turnaround to get them back.
Right, July is what you were talking about.
Yep, and that's like, I think I'll end up with 12.
Is it a,
50 KVAs, which
there
is
a-
typically single phase 50 KVAs, but you put in a housing area.
And
So
how
is
many
that-
gonna take
sorry.
out there, 4?
I'm no engineer on that. Scott and I are gonna talk to DGR on that. I'm not qualified to lay that out and make it flow like it's got the right voltage for the distance and all that.
So a question, I mean, and I'm just asking, cause I sure as hell don't know either, but, so like at the landing and Outlot 20, those have to be put in yet? Can you put in, I mean, there aren't, not every lot has got a house going on or neither one, could you break it up a little bit so that each place would be able to handle it, or is that not feasible either, Jeff?
Typically what you do is you set a transformer and you feed a couple what we call hand holes, and those hand holes could feed 4 to 6 houses. So you set a transformer centrally located and branch off of that for those other spots. You're looking at 22 lots, I believe, out there. So, but when you do it, it's just like any other, street or anything else. You don't wanna put in a transformer and put, 1 in and, or 2 in of housing, and then, oh shit, now we gotta put a grave in and feed over and dig across their yard.
Right.
I typically wanna do it, have it laid out just like everybody else does. So
But I
it's
think
there.
But I think what you're saying might make some sense in order, in today's world, you don't have everything readily available. If we got everything going on, how do we rationalize what we do have to make it work for everybody? Because what you're saying is, and I'll use this as an example, we know, we think he's building 1 this year, maybe 2, and we don't know where it's going from there, and you're talking about possibly 7 or 8 going up, if we can find enough contractors and supplies to build everything. You might need more out there, and then we got Outlot 20 that we gotta find enough stuff for whatever's going there.
It would be nice to know if he's building 1 or 2 out on the, what I would call the north end. Because the 4 lots you were just pointing at, Dale,
I think
that's already there.
this is huge.
That power is already in there for that little piece, cause I initially was told last year he was gonna build a duplex for himself last year, and it didn't get that far.
And is he talking building here? For
Yes,
his?
a duplex and a duplex on that end,
Oh, so yeah, I thought he was gonna build up here, so.
unless he's changed his mind, if that's the
No,
case,
everything's
he's gonna be
always
waiting
been
for power.
It's on the one end.
Okay.
Or street facing lots on the south.
So if that power might already be there, to see, but it's, we can't talk for him because he's not here and we don't know.
Exactly.
But I think as a city, we have to look at, if we come to agreements with what we come propose to everybody and they come back and say, hey, we're moving forward, and we have to rationalize out what we got in today's world, or it might have to be put on hold, unfortunately.
And I'm still waiting for what they call a slot to find out when I can start ordering for 23. Because as soon as I can get my name in the slot, I'm getting my name there's 4 distributors that I can go through. I'm getting my name in every one I can get my name in. We never typically bought from all 4 of them all the time. I've been buying a little from each of them now, because if one's got it and the other one don't that you typically buy, and you don't buy from them, they're not gonna sell it to you, they're gonna sell it to their customer. So that's what I've been trying to do.
You know what, and you
For
guys
sure.
are in the same business with
Yeah,
the supply
no,
chain today,
Yep.
so
Yeah, we got
at least
people
everybody
that-
understands that, I think, sitting here. I mean,
This is my first year of being into this deal, and as far as trying to plan this stuff out, and it's not been too fun, really.
Great time to get into it, huh? Well, I just was curious if it would all go,
It's a very
would
good
we be able to
point.
get power?
it's a very good point.
So let's say everything goes as planned. You guys said March deadline is when you need to know. When are you gonna get started this summer?
Get started as soon as we
As
could.
soon as the weather's fit, which could be,
June, May,
last couple of years it's been April.
yeah.
That's kinda odd, but
Okay.
unfortunately it looks dry right now again, so you might be able to start right away, but.
And if we do come up with something, we've gotta get the ball rolling rather quickly anyway, to get the bids out there for the streets, the water, the sewer, all that stuff, and I see you used King, right? One of you guys used King, I think that was on yours, you know, so, you know, their schedules fill up too, I'm sure, so.
No, our plan would be get going right away. I mean, we need to.
Those guys like that, they're not waiting around for us.
No, they're not today, well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what we can put together and get it
And
to this good.
you mentioned that March 14th, that's when we have to, that's our deadline for us, like, hey,
You're signing the paper.
you
now.
sign a paper, you're
So
not.
you need something from
We need
us.
something
Before that.
before
Right.
that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
And
why-
if it's gonna require any, hey, sharpen the pencil, let's figure out what we can do to make this, you know, work better for you guys or anything like that.
Well, I think we're already at that stage.
Well, obviously,
Yeah.
but we need the, if you had to give us a, this is the number where we're at, where we're comfortable with it, or it works for us, and you need to get to that number, otherwise it's a no deal. We need some time to be able to allow ourselves to go back and.
Renegotiate.
Exactly.
Well, we gotta have our budget stuff done before,
Pretty quick.
yeah,
Yeah,
so. It's, I mean, we've been meeting every week and, so, I don't think it's gonna, I would think in the next 2 to 3 weeks we'll have something, but I'm hopeful anyway, how's that?
really, that's a question for the council then, as far as how we, what is the process that we would use to keep working our way towards a solution? Is it just that you would ask for additional information from the staff and we try to give what you can and have the council reconsider things? Or would you look at doing some committee work with the council committee to dive into that a little bit deeper on certain things? What's your thoughts about how we can keep this thing moving forward?
Well, I'm gonna guess that, because it could take a lot of time at a council meeting. I
You're
think
gonna
I always
have
have
to
to
have
have
a
a
committee.
committee take a look at that.
I think a
What do
committee
you
would
think?
be, how do we do a committee when we can't have more than 3 of us there?
No, it's just two people.
Maybe
It's just,
two of
yeah,
us.
it's the two.
It would probably be 2 council members and the mayor.
Mhm.
Do you wanna borrow money to do these street or housing projects? Is that what you're?
Well, we're gonna have to.
Do I want to?
Yep.
I don't know the answer to that yet today.
I'm just guessing if you wanna
I
borrow it.
I don't know if I wanna borrow money for it or not because of everything else that we've got going and we've got to spend money on. But I don't wanna pass up the opportunity, it's kind of a double-edged sword, I guess you'd say. I don't wanna pass up the opportunity to work with developers either to create more housing. Does that make sense? Am I saying that the right way?
Somewhere along the line, you gotta decide.
Exactly, we
And
do.
It looks like sooner rather than later. These
Yeah.
guys gotta know.
We've got a lot of things on the docket that we've got money thrown out there for that we can't change.
I think you need to do a committee. So that we can keep moving along.
I guess I tend to agree. There'll be some legwork that's involved with this and,
If we're doing a committee and you need a volunteer to be on the committee, I'll volunteer my time. If that's what we want.
you willing to sit in then too, Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. Somebody else who would like to be on the committee?
I would, except you have to do it in the evenings, because I'm out of town working.
Well, it's gonna take a lot of phone calling
Yeah.
and
Analyze it and,
Right.
you know, I mean, just a little bit that I did this afternoon was just with the information that I had and started raising up, I shouldn't say red flags, but question marks. Does that make sense? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, we gotta figure this out, and, we're in a crunch, I don't wanna say crunch for time, but we're in a crunch for time, we're in budget session.
And they
These
need to
gotta
know
have
before-
answers. I'm sure that anybody else, I'm sure Scott Lyon would like to know what we're gonna do there, so they can start planning, if that's the direction they're going. It's a double-edged sword. A great problem to have, how's that?
I'll do
It
it.
it is a
Are you
great
interested
problem.
also?
Yeah. If anybody else wants to do it, I'll do it.
Dale Whitey and the mayor, is that,
Sounds good.
somebody wanna make a motion to establish a council committee?
I'll make that motion.
Second,
No second.
roll call.
Voltman,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
Stanky,
Yes,
Beckman.
Yes. And I would say any information the rest of the council or
Right.
people wanna give
Come
us,
up with,
yeah, I think it's a joint thing, because they all can't be at the same meeting,
right.
unless we call a meeting.
Such as we're having now.
But I mean, I don't know how many hour notice do you have to give before you can have a special council in
24 hours.
24 hours? So if we came up with something that we wanted to get the whole group together, pertaining to that one subject, we can do it.
it might take several meetings, but we got this much accomplished. Find out what the consensus is, and then, like I said, it could take a couple meetings, because we got.
It can't be more than 3, because Craig's been to 3 now, so it can't
Last week's kind of like 2.
be.
What I mean, 4.
Both sides of my butt still
They
left.
can get a little long, yes.
Is that fair enough that we'll start working on that diligently?
And I'd say, you know, you wanna give us homework, give us the homework. I mean, we've been working on this for a long time. We've put a lot of effort into it and a lot of research and time spent, you know.
Find your
We're-
bottom dollar.
Yeah.
What's that?
Find your bottom dollar.
You find yours first.
Yeah.
Well, we should be both working
Can we
towards
just name
that.
what the bottom dollar is?
Well, we'll come up with something,
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I'm sure
we
we
hope
will.
it works for you guys too.
Yeah, well, we hope so. That's the goal for everybody, I think.
Because we're not just speaking for us, we're speaking for 1,200 other residents of the city, so.
We've been pushing pretty hard by your housing and with the affordable, or the housing development. committee.
housing and economic, yeah.
They've had several conversations with us,
Right.
and we're working on their behalf a little bit too, but those guys are pretty, they don't have the authority to
Right.
No.
really
No.
do anything for us, other than encourage
And
us,
we
you know?
tap them for their ideas too, because obviously.
Yeah, but, you know, I think their mind is, and their heart's in the right place. It's
Absolutely.
just, yeah, and like Dale says, yeah, it's a great problem to have, you guys got a great problem
It is.
going on with the whole thing, so,
It's exciting times,
you
really.
know, finding lots to build on is gonna be tough here pretty soon, so.
What do you mean good?
Oh, it is.
It's one of my biggest, I say it the right way, pet peeve, I guess you'd say. If Wayne's thinking if he wants to build a new house in Lakeview right now, where do you build it? You know, it's tough.
Are you guys doing another spec home down here?
Just took out papers this week, so that'll probably be coming across your desk too.
Okay.
All right, perfect.
Then we're out of lots, we need more.
All right.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Well, thank you,
Thank
thanks for
you.
your consideration too, guys.
Yep.
And then, yeah, please call us with any questions you guys got.
Yep.
Alright. See ya.
You'd made a motion, Dale, or you were gonna rescind it.
Oh, I'll rescind the motion, yeah, I guess
It just-
It's done for like,
we can rescind it, or we can,
no, it's done for the language.
It would not have happened.
because I'm not spending 1.1 million, I guess is all I'm saying, so.
Yeah.
Okay, you wanna work through the budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Dave's not here. Back here.
Where do we stop?
Saying just still somewhat related to housing though. Let's flip to page 17.
Oh,
They would be added,
yeah.
give them that. Over 25 years. That's a no-brainer.
Just on, let's just take a look at page 17. This somewhat relates then to the housing and as far as thinking about the types of funds that the city has available. So, looking at three things here. The section that would be in the green, those would be projects that are included in this first draft of the budget. And just know that as we talk about a draft of the budget, I mean, things are included in this draft, but it really just is that, and it's a draft, and it's intended to be, cut apart and made changes to, and make sure that the desires of the council are properly addressed there. So, the top part there with the green, those are projects that are included in this draft, and as you work your way across, you see how, are proposed to be paid for. So just taking that top line for a street project for Lake Shore Drive and a couple, different areas of asphalt, with the project cost of $228,000, $50,000 from general fund, $178,000 from road use tax. And you look at those other projects then too, about Outlot 20, where we made that commitment, that $125,000 coming from the general fund to pay for that. Or Outlot 20 water at $96,000. You see, that's broke up between some from the general fund, from sales tax, lost is sales tax, and then we do have some money in a water sinking fund, and that basically taps out that water sinking fund that had previously been used to set aside for debt service. Same thing then with the highway or school water main loop. Cost there at $149,000. That project, I would tell you, when we talked about it before, it was always talked about at $120,000 or $125,000. We bumped that up a little bit because this makes that connection there at right by Jacobson's and redoes that the 2-inch water line over there serving the the motel and suites. So it added some additional cost to that. And so we were right at 149 on that. ARPA is the COVID money, so that would be proposed to be paid for with the COVID money.
And we can use the COVID money for infrastructure?
Yeah, matter of fact, the two things that are specifically allowed for are water and broadband. We're specifically allowed for. Something that is specifically not allowed for is streets,
Okay.
which was strange.
So, while we're talking about that, how much of that ARPA money do we have?
The total will be 161-ish. We have half of it now. The other half will come in the next few months.
So we have 11,000 left for our AV equipment.
Yeah, that's looking at the estimated balance line, the gray line, then that'll tell you what the estimated balance would be at the end of 23. If you proceed with all of the items that are in green. Okay. Now the other thing to know there, Northwest City Pressure System, that is proposed, it's in this draft, showing that would entirely be funded by TAF.
Okay, on that Northwest City Pressure System, did you guys have a study done by somebody, or did you just have somebody come in and engineer how we can get more pressure to it? Because from what I'm understanding from some of the residents, it's not a pressure issue, it's a volume issue.
Okay.
But I don't know, again, people get that confused, and I'm just trying to make sure where we got our information.
Yeah, because it was an attempt to address pressure.
Wasn't that B&K that did that?
Beechman Kim did the analysis. I mean, it's an engineering study, so to speak, but they didn't come out and shoot grade on everything they
Right.
used.
So here's a perfect analogy for us to talk about that up there. Use a fire hydrant that puts out 100 gallons a minute. Hook a truck up to it that can pump 150 pounds per inch pressure, 100 PSI, 150 PSI. They can only pump it for how far until they're out of volume.
Sure.
So before, and I guess here's where I'm going with this, before we spend $470,000 on a pressure pump system, it ain't gonna do us any good unless we've got the volume
The volume to get it
to
to.
move it. So I'm wondering, did we do the right, are we looking for the right information is what I'm getting at. And here's where I'm going with why I'm asking this, because so a couple of residents up in that Ash Street area are saying, well, when the nursing home was doing all their stuff in the morning with their laundry and baths and all that stuff, they don't have the water pressure at their place, and they can't shower at their place because it's all going that direction. Well, that's a volume issue, not a pressure issue.
Is that loop feed gonna help?
The loop feed will help with, quantity.
Okay,
It doesn't do anything for pressure.
right, well, so I guess my question is it a pressure issue or is it a volume issue? Do we know the answer to that before we spend $470,000? Follow what I'm saying?
I do, because
And then my next question, if that loop feed is going to help with the volume issue, and I don't know how big a main we're looking at putting in there, but if, because we're going from a 2 to a 4 or a 6.
6.
And it is a 6 what's feeding that today? Or are we going from
No, a
an 8?
4-inch goes past the front of the school, right?
Correct, and then it's a 4-inch that goes from Jacobson out to Denny's house.
That's a 4.
That's a 4-inch, we found out that's a 4-inch.
And we're talking about replacing the 2-inch that
In
comes
front of the
down the
hotel.
street east and west.
That goes to, all it goes to is the hotel.
And Levi Teese's?
No, his goes across the road already.
Well, George Cross owned that. He paid George Schmidt to bore the road and tap the main on the south side of the road in front of Shodden's, Debbie Shodden's.
And how big is that?
4-inch, I
I
believe.
think that's 4 also.
Fine.
So, we're gonna put in a 6-inch from Jacobson's over to the school,
Jacobson's to Bill Riley's.
to Bill Riley's.
Or,
And
no,
that's
excuse me, Denny's house to Bill Riley's.
Denny's house to Bill Riley's. We're gonna put in a 6-inch there. And then we're gonna loop it, and we're looping it from Bill Riley's all the way back to the motel? To that main there?
Eventually, but, or essentially, but the loop itself is from, there's a main in front of Denny's house. So from Denny's house to Bill's, to connect to existing main.
Okay, so, but my question is, or my, trying to follow, we have a 4-inch feed in this,
Mm-hmm.
and a 4-inch feed in this, and now we're gonna put a 6-inch.
If we have 2 4 feet and a 6, I think that's true.
Okay.
But we should try to do the loop feed first, if that is, here's some of the problems we're gonna be.
We gotta find out which one.
That's my point.
Yeah,
And I guess where I'm going with this, maybe took too long to get there, cause that's the way I am, is if that loop feed works, is there another loop feed that we can do that might help that situation up there as well? Because I truly believe it's a volume issue, not a pressure issue. I don't know that, that's just my thought process of listening to them tell me what they're experiencing. Does that make sense to you guys?
And
I don't wanna
we
spend
do-
$470,000 on a pressure issue when you can't pump, cause you can't pump air. And that's, you know, if you ain't got the volume, that pump system ain't doing us nothing.
Mhm.
but if you simply do the loop feed first, and if that don't care about, then we're looking at the pressure.
Is that something we can just check with VK and find out?
Yeah, well, they've done some further analysis on loops too. They gave us 3 different analysis on doing some loops.
Is that, but is it addressing the volume or the pressure?
Well, but, you know, I think I probably share that, the same opinion that I don't know that we're ready to jump on a big pressure project. You know, if this is something that you wanna continue to take a look at, it takes some additional study.
Well,
There you go.
I think it's something that needs to be looked at, but I don't wanna just throw money at something unless we're doing it right.
Exactly.
How come I don't see any Ash Street fire hydrants?
It's like,
It's probably on the corner of Fifth and,
it says 600, says 515 Ash Avenue.
Oh, there's 423 Ash, okay, there we
Yeah,
go.
7, 8 down.
So,
So I need to confirm, and just get you copies of this too. We do have this engineering study on a joint letter on the pressure system and the loop feeds. And I'll just get you copies of that again. Hopefully I've provided it to everybody.
yeah, as long as we can understand what the engineer's saying.
It's, yeah, you sure can. This is, like I said, this one's just a letter, it's not an engineering analysis necessarily.
I can't understand what V and K is saying when they're here.
I get lost when I start going 4.6 million.
I love talking engineer.
You know,
Yeah.
But I think that's a viable concern that we all maybe share.
Well, if we go to spend 469 million, we're gonna take more time than just, 6 months to decide to do it. So we don't do that.
I think that's the direction that I'm trying to explain myself. Does that make sense?
Do loop first. and
Yeah.
then address that.
Yeah, and I just didn't wanna put a 6-inch if we're only gonna have one 4-inch feed the 6, and if we're having two 4-inches feed that 6, that should help.
We need a permit from the DNR in order to extend this water line. They own that six. Yeah, when it comes to that, so.
Well, it should be done that way.
All right, yeah. So as you look at this financing large capital projects page, again, 17, and so we've worked our way down to the middle of the page where you see the gray line about estimated balances. So if you're saying that we would do these projects up top, that tells you what the estimated ending fund balance is in all of these funds. So I would say the general fund has an ending fund balance of $589,000. Okay, 30,000 in road use tax, 141,000. We know for sure what it is next budget year.
Right.
And then anything after that's an estimate. But you do have an estimate, sure.
But it doesn't go, so like we lost the VAPCO, first stage of the VAPCO tip money, because that's been there so long. So what else is gonna fall off shortly that we would lose the next following year, or it would,
Or what are we gonna gain?
or what are we gonna gain, yeah?
Sure. So the big thing is you're gaining the new evapco plant.
But isn't that at what word am I looking at, tax abatement, Schedule 2?
That's on some tax abatement, so for the first 5 years, you get a smaller percentage of the increment for TIF, but you
Right.
still get that portion. And then also, it's the new construction then that's going along the highway, so it is everything from, even Heartland down there for that construction, and Shavens, and then Sparky's, and Jacobson, all that.
Correct, and then plus Crescent Park Drive,
Yeah, that actually rolled on for this year.
it did. So what is this year's budget year?
62 or 63,000.
So we're talking expected of getting 63,000,
Yep,
and you wanna pay back 100.
yeah, in
So we're
the
27,000 short,
in
37,000
the
short.
subsequent years. Yep, because we do keep adding that new
Stuff on.
that new stuff on. So yeah, in subsequent years, Dale, it will continue to grow.
Do we know how fast we get to the 100?
Here's the rough math, for every $1 million of taxable valuation that we have, it generates about $25,000.
Say that again.
For every $1 million of taxable
Every
valuation,
million?
generates $25,000.
But now that's after is that after the tax abatement like he was talking?
Yeah, for taxable valuation.
And on Jacobson's and on,
Now, there is no abatement on Jacobson's.
there isn't?
No, that's why we're
Okay.
paying them that amount instead.
Okay, so we just have the VAPCO tax abatement, nothing on Sparky's,
There's tax abatement on Sparky's.
there is.
Yeah, sure.
How about on, Heartland?
Yep, there would be there too.
So most of these new projects have tax abatement minus
Yep, so-
Jacobson.
And it's 70% the first year, so it's adding 30% of the additional value.
So 30% of 25,000 for every million generated.
Well, again, we're just looking at that total.
I'm just trying to figure out,
Well,
to make sure that we can pay this back, like you said, at $100,000 a year. I mean, when I'm doing a payment of $100,000 a year over 10 years, I'm thinking I'm paying $100,000 year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. Is what you're trying to tell me, if I'm following you correctly, we're gonna pay 60 the first year, then 65, and then it could be 120 or 130 in year 8 or 9.
You can structure it that way if need be, but I wouldn't anticipate that you need to. It'd be a $100,000 payment. In 23, 24 would be the first year that you pay back.
and you're anticipating we would have 100,000 of TIF fund
Yep.
income for that.
And
So
whether it's
next-
income or not, there's another $50,000 in balance that we could be spending down. There's money.
Well, you say there's money, but
Keep
I don't
spending
see it
money
on
too.
paper.
I mean,
So we're spending our $100,000 TIF income for the next 10 years on these projects, is what
That's
you're
true. Oh, yeah. Yep, that would be the idea. Yeah, bottom of page 19 showed just the cost on the Highway 175 water main loop that we had talked about. And that fixes the area up there by the hotel, and then also does the loop from Blessington's to Riley's.
And these are good numbers?
The number from the engineer there is that $120,000. This adds to it for the unit cost to have them replace that 2-inch with a bigger main there too. So those are unit costs from the engineer, yes.
Because.
The other thing on that,
And the reason I'm asking that question is, everybody in this room knows how much shit has went up. I shouldn't say shit, but stuff has went up.
the other part about that, about the connection there at Jacobson's and replacing this 2-inch, we were talking with Dean about that, about really having that be a city project that we would take care of ourselves. You know, we would anticipate the cost to be substantially less than that, we're just buying materials.
Right, except,
But I don't wanna give you anything that's too low, you know.
well, I don't either. I'd rather have the high number than the low number and
Yeah.
come out, hey, I got extra money that we can now utilize for a pickleball court, for example, or whatever it may be. Or the next project that we were short on.
Yep,
I don't wanna go into a project expecting it to cost $150,000 and all of a sudden it's $180,000.
The other building we do for 4 and it turns out 6.
Yeah, I see that happening.
It happens.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to avoid. Does that make sense?
Well, we did too.
page 20 just gives a quick recap on how the proposal would work for budgeting for that community center. That it shows current fiscal year purchasing the land, $50,000, and that's reimbursed by donations. Then would propose $25,000 then for engineering and design, which would come from TIF.
And we already committed to like 12,000, right?
12,000
For the engineering.
has been committed to on that, and there'll be some additional engineering for sure on the electrical and mechanical side of things. So we're looking at the budget then for next year, where there's 1.375. The number that's used for this project yet is that 1.45 that we've used for the project so far. So we're in the process now of refining that number. And I guess just here's a little update about that as far as the building design goes. So we've been working with Lakeview Lumber, refining the floor plan on that, coming up with what the specifications of the building would be. So, and got through the first draft on that they have submitted to the structural engineer. So that's where it's at right now, is with the structural engineer coming back with plans on that. The engineer that we hired for the site plan has given us a draft on site plan then to incorporate the building pad side, the site, the parking lot, and then the green infrastructure. So I do have a proposal on that then too. The next thing to turn around then is, and Aaron started doing this, is to work with an engineer on the electrical and mechanical side of things. So, and then we'll have some cost as far as what the consulting fees would be on that. So really that's where we're at on the design.
So you have in the 22-23 budget remaining cost of $1,375,000.
Yes. That's 1.45 less the 75 up top.
it was engineering plans for the water for a grant,
That's true,
Right.
yep, and that's all coming together, right?
and we got 20,000 a day.
Yeah, it's, that we did hear now that it's official in public that the project was awarded that $20,000 grant from the Rural Innovations Grant through the state.
Is that the one that you sent us email on?
Yeah. Yes, sir. So it really, when you look at the grants, we got the $250,000 from Great Places, $20,000 from Rural Innovations. Those are the two biggest grants that they have. And then the fundraising side of things, I don't have an actual updated number, but there was something over 180.
We got pre-approved for a cat rental, right?
I put in the pre-application.
Pre-application,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
So hopefully that's a $250,000.
So, this project though, isn't coming out of the city general funds.
No, yeah,
So that's.
the way this will
But
show
it
in
just has to
the,
show on the budget.
the way it shows in the draft of the budget is down, how it's broke out down there. 475 from TIF, 150 from donations, and 750 from grants,
Right.
of which those grants, we've not been awarded many of them. That 750 total is not that high yet.
So
And what happens if this project comes in at the 1.9 that I showed in this one pamphlet last Monday night?
Yeah, the council's gonna have some decisions to make. It's,
That'd be cool.
we don't have any other earmarked funds for the project.
So,
what, so when is, I wanna do a hypothetical, and that's terrible to do when you're doing a budget. The funds come, the estimate comes back at the 1.45 million, like it's been talked about. When does a shovel go on the ground?
The biggest thing, Dale, here on financing deals with that CAT grant, and the CAT grant applications are gonna be due in the summer.
The reason I'm asking that, because we got 475,000 in TIF funds that maybe would go into, maybe it's fiscal year 23-24 budget before that shovel goes in the ground, that we could be utilizing on some of these other projects. Am I saying that the right way, or asking that question the right way?
Yeah, just, the timeline that we've tried to use before is to be doing some construction, late fall, winter of 22. If things fall into line, that's conceivable.
Okay.
But, and that's why it shows.
That
But
answers
if
that
we don't
question.
get to that 1.4 or 1.9, whatever it is, that's, could be waiting.
Sure.
Because grants have to be spent at a certain time.
Yes.
Right.
So,
It's all
I mean,
timing.
it's all, hopefully everything comes together. And
Yep.
if not,
And that's why it shows, from a budget perspective, it just shows the expenses and the equivalent amount of revenues coming in. It's just an in and out of wash on that. But, for however much the project would be, but we just have to raise that much money.
We won't know what it costs till we get that stuff back.
Correct.
That's true.
Then we'll know if
hopefully we get back.
Well, and that's why we
that's why we did that.
voted on spending that money. And when you said Aaron is coming up with the electrical and the HVAC,
Working with this electrical engineer on that.
okay, Aaron Brotherton?
You're right.
The same way we did the library this way.
And how close was that? I'm just asking.
Boy, we did pretty close.
Lower, it was lower.
Yeah, it was lower.
It was lower.
Yeah.
Lower than the engineers.
That's good.
The
I
bid
like
came
hearing
in
that.
lower than the engineer said.
Perfect. All right.
So, looking at page 21, that's the running balance of the TIF account. So if you, starting out at the highlighted line in the middle of the page, and that is the balance in the account then as of December. So then as we pay the retainage and we pay the Jacobson incentive, okay,
So,
then you see the property taxes that would roll in yet for this, for the remainder of this current fiscal year.
okay, so on this sheet, it shows left 122, we're getting 31,336
Yeah, twice.
for the 62.
Yeah, that's the two tax payments.
Okay.
Yeah. And that is the amount that the
Where is the?
county has said is coming.
So in 5-1, we're getting 16,440.
That's the amount remaining for this current fiscal year,
Okay,
of the amount yet that the county has told us to expect.
okay, so this is 62,700 some dollars.
Yep. Now, this shows that large loan being taken out, you know, and if you decide that you're not gonna proceed with the pressure system, that would go down. But in order to still do that, Evapco water main project, we would be looking at some additional debt. And while we're doing the debt for that, we would look to refinance the existing $200,000 that's in there.
So we can always borrow back from her now?
Yes, it's true, yeah, Dale, I mean, it
So the
can
county
work
thing.
that way. Okay, all right, so, now we're just gonna get into some basic information stuff then. And we've, page 22, just some informational charts about rollback figures for the different classifications of property. And we've talked through this a little bit, that the residential rollback is down, over 2% from what this current fiscal year is. So next year, the residential rollback will be 54.13%. Okay, multi-residential continues to go down every year, 3.75%. Next year, actually, that drops down to whatever the residential rollback is. So it'll be a much more significant drop-off than that for next year. And that's for our apartments that we have here in town, but it's also for the nursing home. So that it's still a relatively small portion of our valuation, but it's significant. Okay, commercial and industrial still at 90%. Okay. Bottom half of the page gets to the road use tax per capita estimates. The state provides an estimate for that. And so per person, per capita this year, $126.50 would come in. Now, it's also now based upon our new census, where we were 1,142 and it's dropped a little bit, it's 1,113. So our total road use tax funds are actually down a little bit next year compared to this current year.
So, our population went down. I'm just trying to figure this out, but I think I know the answer to this. Our population went down, but our housing has went up,
Yeah,
and it's because we don't have full-time residents.
that's true.
Is that the
That's the
reason?
deal, yeah. Yeah, that 1,113 people is the census population, and they only count the permanent full-time folks. A couple other changes then on the bottom deals with IPERS contribution rates. No change to the regular class. There's a slight change then to protection class. That's the amount that we pay for the police. So the employer's rate goes up 0.3%, up to 9.61%.
He's sleeping
Next page just shows those taxable valuations. We had went through this before, and you can see that our taxable valuation goes up at 10.8%.
We're the top dog this year.
No, we were not.
Bad for that. I thought we were in second.
We're still doing pretty good. We added $9.6 million in taxable valuation this year. And that's more than several of the communities in the county in total, which that floored me. It was a great year for growth.
Where did Wall Lake at 3.8?
And it had a lot to do with Western Island Energy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I asked the assessor that too, and that was the biggest part.
And Sac at 3.9.
Now, a lot of that, and a lot of it for us too, is that reevaluation, reassessment. You know, residential values went up,
25%.
you know. So, as we look, at property tax on the next page, these property tax scenarios. And this will be the one thing that we really need to do tonight, is to establish maximum property tax, dollars. Okay, so, the way the state law works is that we need to have a public hearing. And the issue that you really have in the public hearing on is general fund tax dollars. In our case, it's the general fund. And we would publish the amount that we get this year, and then publish what the amount of dollars would be proposed for next year. And you can make that be whatever it is that you think you need, or would like it to be. But there's one thing in the state code that is a break off on there, and it deals with 2%. And the only thing about this 2% is that if the city would propose to increase our general fund tax dollars by more than 2%, the budget needs to pass by a supermajority of council members then. Okay, and that's the only difference about what the 2% thing is. Other than, you can just kind of use it though as a rule of thumb then too, if that's something that we could aim towards. So I gave you some options there, keeping the general fund dollars the same. And so these are the numbers here in total, our tax levy this year. It shows as 7.948, so figure $7.95 per $1,000 of taxable valuation. If we keep the general fund dollars the same, that $7.94 becomes $7.16, so it drops 79 cents.
If we do what now?
If you keep the general fund tax dollars the same.
Okay.
Then the middle section there shows about increasing the general fund tax dollars by 2%. Again, our tax rate right now is $7.94. If we would increase general fund tax dollars by 2%, the levy is still at $7.29, so it's a levy reduction of 66 cents. If we would look at keeping the total tax levy the same this year, it shows that at the bottom. So if we're at $7.95 now and you would keep it at $7.95, you can see what happens to the general fund there, about the type of dollars that it generates, $77,000 of additional general fund property tax dollars. But the total tax asking stays at $7.95. So as we talk about this and talk through the budget, the numbers that are included in this draft of the budget show that 2% increase in general fund dollars. Okay, so that would be a tax levy decrease, but the general fund dollars go up 2%. So keep that in the back of your mind.
So you're talking about the one in the middle?
The one in the middle, yep. Just keep that in the back of your mind as we talk through the big picture budget stuff about where we would sit on the general fund especially, because that's the fund that we're looking at as far as assessing tax.
Can we back up to page 23 quick? I have a quick question. So Lakeview TIF, percent value as TIF, what are them numbers on there for?
So we want to show the total amount of value of our total taxable value, what part of our total taxable value is within the TIF district.
Okay.
Okay, and that's all that it's intended to show.
That's the 1.73.
No, it's the 2.63%.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're at, so of our total taxable value, 2.6% is in the TIF district.
So from 2020 to 2021, that fiscal year compared to 21-22, that's when the Evapco project fell off.
That's right, yeah.
And then now to 22-23, we're only going up to 2.6.
Right.
When does, so in 23-24 is when the other ones come back on then?
The additional stuff on the highway would come on next year, and the following year after that, look for the Evapco project to come on.
Okay.
So the percentage there, percent value as TIF will climb a little bit.
Is there any rules, regulations, guidelines on what that can be?
There's no there's no regulation on it, but we do wanna provide it as a guideline, cause you sure don't want it to be too high.
Right, correct,
You know, it's, we were at 7% for lots of years, and it's gone down.
so this is something we need to move on rather quickly as well for the public hearing, correct?
Yeah, before the night's done, I'm gonna ask you to pass that resolution to establish public hearing date. And within that public hearing notice, we would establish what the maximum tax rate is. Now, you can choose a maximum tax rate to be whatever you want it to be, a maximum rate, okay? And you can always work your way down from that if you would choose.
Can we choose a minimum?
When you put that in there, whatever you put as the maximum, Dale, is gonna be the maximum, so.
Our assessed valuations went up $25 million
Where you at?
on
the top
page
of
24. We went up,
Assessed valuations, yeah.
yeah, assessed,
Okay.
25 million. That's percentage wise, that's 17%.
Yep, and then you take the amount, you gotta include the residential rollback then and all of that stuff. So by the time you account for all of the rollbacks, the taxable value went from 88 to 98 million.
So we have 9.6 million more on our taxable valuation.
Yes.
Right,
Yep.
yeah.
But if we keep it the same, we don't get any more money.
If you keep
Or
the,
A levy the same,
Yeah.
if you keep the levy the same, you get a lot more money.
yeah.
But if you
But
keep
if
the,
we lower the levy,
Well, so current year, budget year,
yep,
general fund dollars stay the same.
yeah, so that's scenario number one where the general fund dollars stay the same.
Okay, so where does this extra money go then on that 9.6 million in valuation, or we have to lower
If the tax rate lowers,
the tax rate lowers?
yep.
Boy, that's okay. But not really.
but for the budget that we're looking at,
Right.
the way it's at right now,
He's got it at the 2%.
we got it at, have to have it at the 2%. Okay.
All right.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify.
So, yep, the next page would show that resolution, we're gonna ask you to, pass before the end of the night, and then on to page 26, just shows you what the public notice is gonna be. We would fill in the amount of tax dollars there, and then it does tell you what the annual, percent change is in those dollars.
So hypothetically, if we did the one in the middle, like on this page 24, then the annual percentage change would be 2%.
It would be 2%, yeah.
Making sure I'm following.
All right, now we'll walk through a few of the things about how, become components of the budget. In page 27 just looks at wages. So, within each of the departments then, based upon this spreadsheet, you can see that the amount would be budgeted for each one of these departments then. At the top of the page, it tells you the assumptions. All full-time union and non-covered employees are assumed to increase 2%. Wages for part-time police are assumed to increase 2%. And returning summer wages increase 25 cents per hour. So if they come back for another year of employment, historically their wage has gone up 25 cents. So, so just looking at that top section for police, where it's talking about the hourly wage, that would be the hourly wage for next year. Again, that assumes 2%. And then
Keep going.
you just follow that down and it'll tell you, basically, how much we're budgeting. If it's at $254,000 for the police department, some of that's overtime. When you follow it back through all the budget forms, it'll show $248,000 or whatever as the amount of wages for the police department. Nothing, No staffing changes or anything, of course, proposed within the police department. When you look at the parks, there are a couple things that are different there. So, looking at the parks, where we would have Eric again as the lead guy, Eric and Mark, and you see their hourly wages. I also would propose a third 9-month parks worker. Concept there being that both Eric and Mark have really showed their desire that they would like to be able to work less hours. So we hire a third employee with the trying to work through this with 3 guys to where they're not paid too much more than what the two guys would have been paid before. Because
So Eric and Mark's hours are reduced
they're reduced.
with the
They've been
9-month
like
worker,
15
so them, the total of them 3 is 2% increase to the total of the 2.
I can't tell you that, Dale. It's more than what the 2 would have been, but I'd have to tell you what that is. But I'm sure it's more than 2%.
So you did it with Eric and Mark and this Jake last year?
Yes, yep.
What's this Parks employee number 2 biocells?
Looking at having another summertime parks employee. Okay, and one of the biggest things that has come up as additional work is maintenance on those biocells. So we'd look at having some additional help available to assist with that, as well as helping out with any additional maintenance in the park.
And then another one for bump out helper?
Yeah, and then another one.
And then
for
Ruth Green is still on this payroll too?
Ruth would, assuming Ruth would want to come back, which she has talked about, that, she'd be be there as a campground attendant.
At $20 an hour.
We can have that discussion, Dale, but for budget purposes, it shows that way.
And then we have an assistant manager,
Yep,
and then campground attendant 1, 2, and 3.
yeah, and that would be really the normal amount of staff that we would look at for the campground. Manager, assistant manager, 1, 2, 3 on the attendants, and sometimes we've done 4 attendants, which would be Ruth. Yeah, and that bump out helper would be something additional to help really focusing on the gardens, a lot of it downtown, by those type of areas.
So we're gonna focus on the bump out, but we haven't focused on trimming trees.
In the campground,
In the town. I don't know, it used to fall under the Parks Department, I don't know what department it falls under anymore.
last spring we had Peters come in and trim it in the campground.
In the campground, and we do have our public works guys trimming street trees, Dale. It falls under public works.
It used to fall under the Parks.
Yeah, years ago it sure did.
I guess I have an issue with working on bump outs and not working on trimming trees, and the trimming trees is a bigger issue than the bump outs in my opinion.
Well, the bump out's usually a high school camp,
Well, it's still an
and
issue.
they can't trim trees.
Well, my point is, it's still $2,000 that we can be assessing to somebody else to trim trees. I hear that a lot in our town, and if anybody watches the campers going out of town, they know it's an issue.
Well, they usually try to cut the avenues into town.
Usually trying to and doing it are 2 different things, is my point, and we're
Understood.
talking about budget here, and we're gonna budget for a bump out helper, and I don't see anything in here about trimming trees, is what I'm getting at. I'm sorry I'm getting a little testy over it, but it's an issue that needs to be done.
And Public Works does the trim on the roads, it's not parks.
And it used to always be the Parks.
It hasn't been for quite some time now.
Several, yeah. 10+ years, I suppose.
Since Leo retired.
Since Leo retired, I think that's. Okay, just on road use tax, we only pay for half of one guy out of road use tax, and then we've also paid for one utility floater.
Correct.
the other half of Tommy coming out of water, and then you see Dean. One guy out of sewer. And you see our electric guys, the three guys, and into utility floaters out of electric. In the ideal situation, we sure would love to have 3 utility floaters. We have struggled with staffing on that. Last year we had 1.
You got a 18-year-old, 18?
That you need to be 18 for floater.
Either floater?
Yeah, the utility floaters position, you gotta be 18. To work in the parks, you gotta be 16.
What about the, didn't I see, utilities floater back here under road use? That's still 18.
That's 18, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Because of the electrical part,
It actually deals with operating equipment and specifically anything in regards to hoisting. So I mean, we can't operate a skid loader for sure unless you're 18.
is that an insurance deal?
State law.
State law.
Yeah.
So, is that because we're a municipality?
No, that same thing would apply to anyone.
Well, how do these construction outfits hire these younger kids that are not 18 running skid loaders and stuff?
I don't know. I would not recommend we do that.
Well, I'm not just asking the question, I thought maybe it was something since we're a municipality, is what I'm asking.
No, it's general, that's just a general employment rule.
What's the minimum wage right now? $7.75 yet?
7.25, I think.
$7.25?
We'll struggle to get enough
Sometimes you
floaters
gotta
for
go by
15.
competitive wage.
Yeah. Those wages for campground and for the floaters were adjusted last year, so I'd like to think they're okay. I know Sandy might buck it.
We still can't get them. They won't come to that.
Well, I remember years ago when we used to have lifeguards, and we were trying to pay them $7 an hour, and you can't pay $7 an hour for the responsibility that they're at.
Sure.
It's probably something that needs to be looked at in today's world. But I don't know what a kid makes anymore today.
I know that, for what? Lifeguard?
Well, just in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I do know that, you know, again, talking about lifeguards, but it's also rolled down to summer positions, you know, that neighboring communities have increased theirs, but we're still within the ballpark on similar wages. Any other questions on that one? Page 29 just shows the police department cost. Those being, I think personnel costs are actual for 22, and then the estimated budget then for this upcoming year. So what this really shows you is this is what we give to the city of Wall Lake about how we compute their law enforcement contract. So the big box at the bottom shows that as you put all of this stuff together and you come up with the total police department operating cost, $384,149, and we can compute that down to what it costs to provide a man-hour of service, $46.17, just over the life of the contract. Really, we could just honor that same price then for Wall Lake, and they pay us for 20 hours per week. But we had Brandon check on that a little bit about the Wall Lake contract and where they were on hours. Can you talk about that a little bit there?
Yeah, I think what was the number I gave you, 740. So it equaled, the hours equal to about, so what my officers do is when they go there, they go for, they'll do patrol time for an hour, and they will send it to dispatch. Like I was in C16, which is a designated area for Wall Lake. C16 1 hour, so it creates a call. And so that's the way we can keep track of their hours that they've been there. So we are there for 14 hours a week, not including any calls for service. For example, say if we are on a call for, 2 hours there dealing with a missing kid, which has happened. Or for instance, We dealt with a situation where we had to take somebody to the hospital, and this person was there for, I think, 3 nights. Well, that's 24 hours that we had to be with that person through all 3 days, so that's 72 hours right there. So that accounts for that too. So when you're taking into account for that 42, or that 14 hours, you have to add also the calls for service that we're also there for, and what we respond to. Does that make sense?
We bill them for over hours?
What's that?
We bill them if we do extra hours? We haven't.
We haven't. We haven't.
I've computed this from our population compared to their population, they're at 75% of our population,
Okay.
but yet they're only paying 12.5% of our gross fees for the police department.
Okay.
Which just means that we spend more time over here than we do over there, even though the population's there.
I agree, but I think they're getting a hell of a good deal.
That's,
I mean,
well, I certainly can't argue with you, Mike, because we
if
give
they
them the
had to
same
put
price we
an
do.
officer on and pay all the benefits, you know, IFRS and unemployment and health insurance,
Sure, you bet.
furnish a vehicle,
How long is our contract? When's that up?
So
2023.
so we will,
More.
we'll renew, again, it's the last year of the contract is 22-23. So this upcoming budget year is the last year of the contract. This time next year, we would be receiving notice about renegotiating, or whatever option they would look at.
So is there any way you could keep track of hours that we're not getting paid for? You know, you're over the extra hours
Over the next year. yes.
over the next year, so we got an idea of what is our average time over there, you know?
Yeah, so what I can do is, yeah, I can do that. It's built into the CAD system where I could get that to work.
I think that'd give us that we could show actual numbers that we're not guessing, I guess, and keep track.
Yeah, yes.
We're still in the first month, so I mean, you can go back, look if there was anything out of the norm. And then,
And what's not in the account for that is my administrative hours that I'm over there. Speaking with city managers and so forth. That's not there, because a lot of times I won't, because I'm not there for a full hour, I'm not C16 me. So that's not accounted for, but yes, I can start doing that personally, so we can keep an exact number of where we're at on that. Instead of more of a rough estimate, but I think we have a pretty good idea that, I have a pretty good feel for that we are well at our 20 hours over there.
well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Cause, you know, things like taking that patient out to the hospital, we gotta bill them for that. That's not our. I mean,
We're only
it's
getting
something
paid for
should
20
be.
hours of, and I'd like to see the average and how much we actually overdo it. Then we can negotiate, then we got some hard numbers to come at them with, you know what I'm saying? And it's important that we're not pulling numbers out of the air. And
Yes, yeah, I can have the CAD system set up for that too.
so, that would be informative to, that would help a lot. Especially when we're coming up to renewing the contract.
Yep, sure. Just flipping to page 30, this is the same document that we had reviewed on insurance costs. Just the budgeted amount are showed in that box, clear at the bottom, so we budget 124 from the general fund and 124,000 from electric to pay for all of our insurance costs that way. $31 just shows the outstanding debts. Again, we went through that at the last meeting also. And yeah, really no changes on that other than looking at that internal TIF debt, if we would refinance, there is no repayment. It would just be completely refinanced and paid off.
So, did I see earlier, and I have to look back, but really you'll know, we're refinancing 200 though, and we only owe 100, or are we just refinancing the 100?
We would refinance 200, that would pay the whole thing.
But we only owe 100.
If, within that, the issuance of that 200,000, it said it'd be paid back within 2 years. So that's why I showed it at 100,000 for a payback. But if we refinance the whole thing, there is no payback. It would just be all be paid.
Okay.
That's,
Okay, and then on page 32, is year one of that capital improvements plan. So, again, anything that is listed here is included in that draft. So, a couple of the things that were highlighted, that council chambers, audio visual, add that to it, okay? Highlighted the Camp Crescent North Playground, so that is incorporated into a draft here. And the utility or dump trailer at $4,000 was a different price based upon some research that Dale had done. When you see the question marks, those question mark ones are not included in the draft of the budget. So the utility pad project there at the campground's not included. Okay, correct an error for me on this one where I highlighted the $149,000 for the Highway 175 drainage, that I changed the wrong number. That one should remain, it would have remained at 125,000, but it's not incorporated anyway. Dropping down a few lines to where it says highway/school water main loop, that's the one that would be 149,000. The other ones that are not incorporated into the budget now, the Lakewood Partners Water or the Hankey additional water. And really, nothing is incorporated into the draft of this budget pertaining to Lakewood Partners or Hankey at all.
I see nothing in here about the shop roof. You know,
Yeah, it's proposed to be done in the spring before this budget.
and it's only budgeted at 2,000, right?
Well, it's not really budgeted
It's not budgeted?
for anything, Mike. It'll be done under this current budget. And we were looking at the options of the repair, which was the couple $1,000, or the other option was $28,000, something like that, on a new roof.
But for either option, there's money in the budget for it, right?
There's money in the general.
Money in the general
There's
fund.
there's cash available to do it. We would.
So it's not,
We would have to.
And then we're gonna do it right.
Yeah,
I mean, we're gonna have a,
Yep.
they're gonna foam that, weren't they?
That 28,000, is that a new roof?
They're gonna foam it?
Well, the first thing they're gonna do is spray the top seam,
Right,
to see if that stops it, and then it was to do the whole thing in a foam.
That would spray foam the whole thing.
That's the $28,000
I
bid?
believe so, yeah.
So can we get a bid on fixing it right?
I mean, those are the only two things that we've done so far.
Yeah.
cause we foamed the roof on this building that way, wasn't it? We foamed the roof here, and we've had good luck with that.
No, it does not.
It's a flat roof.
Yeah, it's worked here.
Well,
should get a bid on,
Right. Big two ingredients with the right.
So when you look at page 34, if you wanna be able to follow a lot of these numbers on the back half of the packet, you, just looking at the top there where it says general and it says 0019504400, that would be a line item for grants. So within that line item, it's budgeted at $16,000, and those are the things that are included in that line item. So you'll be able to follow through.
So these are grants,
The top one is grants, yeah.
and this is money that we have coming in, grants coming in for like Trees Forever, we have a $1,000 grant coming, and this ICAP, we have a $1,000 grant coming?
Yes, you know, we would anticipate those. They
Okay.
have been recurring grants every year.
Okay.
Same thing with the harvester. We called it a harvester grant, but it's primarily now to pay for herbicide instead. Okay, we'd make some changes on the TIF debt. That would not be $835,000. That would remove the pump station. And then as you're looking at capital projects, there again, those are grants. They just, what we would call anticipated grants, but like looking at the fire equipment bus. That would be some grants that would be rolling in, we haven't done anything with that yet. So, just again, we would hopefully anticipate that to happen. With the generators, again, just that those have been applied for, no action. We haven't heard anything back on those yet.
Can you print out, you know, your double out 950, 440 up here? Can you print out a thing that says this is grants and down the 301, 750, 4428, what that one's for? I mean,
Yeah, we can, it's in the back. That's what the thing is, they're in the back.
they're all in the back?
Yeah, for each line item. You would see that, so when you go to page 42 of the packet, and actually flip over to 43, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4 line items down is where the grants line item is. Okay, and that tells you, the far right is what the proposed new budget would be, and then you see the current budget and what it was for the past couple of years. So with that then, you can follow each one of those line items on revenues, and then for the expenses, that's on page 35, 36, 37, 38. It'll give you a breakout of everything that would be included within those line items. But really looking, especially on the expense side of things, that capital projects related stuff, if it's in that year one of the capital improvements plan, it's included in here.
Economic Development Fund, is that we're using that $5,000 grant?
That's that grant fund.
That grant fund?
Yep.
So can we change the name of that to Business Development Grant?
Sure. Yep.
Make it easier to follow, does that make, for me anyway?
Sure can, I just need to find it.
Right here, 36.
Okay. Okay, can do.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine, you can just make that change.
Because I think that's what that's used for, but it'd be easy.
That's really the only thing it's used for.
And what's the other Economic Development Fund like? I see two of them.
We got one in hotel motel and then one in capital projects.
We had $50,000 at one time for the housing folks, but that should not be there. We're just holding over the other the allocation that was in this current year. It's not proposed to have anything now.
So cross out that one.
I think that one probably goes out. Just a comment there, I'm on page 37, more towards the bottom there at sewer. That we would budget these expenses then for this upcoming year for the sewer plant project. To pay the retainage, we do still owe the contractor $131,000 on that. And we only have about $15,000 of SRF money that we're still drawing back in. So we actually got another $110,000 of funds that had been set aside, and we would utilize those funds then to pay that. We are still paying crop damage too, and this would be the, God, I hate to tell you it's the last year, because it might be 2 more years, but this is either the last year or we budget one more. I'd have to confirm that for you.
Okay, while we're on that page, talking about some of this stuff, because you wanna talk about budget stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I handed everybody a chart on the hydrants. And I know it's been budgeted to replace 4 a year and they haven't been done. And now it's on here again to replace 4.
But we actually need to replace all the floor.
That's my opinion. In my opinion, it's a high priority. We're talking about service and safety to our community. In my opinion.
Yeah, I guess I would, offer this out to you, when we look at ways to finance those things, that certainly is a good use of that COVID money, of ARPA money. And we have some funds left over to be able to address multiple,
I didn't think we had funds left over.
there was, yeah.
We had 161, but it showed we were only using
Yeah, we had
what?
like 12,000 left over.
But I thought we were gonna use that for your updated AV equipment or whatever.
Well, that's 3,000 here, but
You can get that done for 3?
I hope so.
Okay. But yes, then I'm fine with that, but I just know that for me,
So,
and then while we're on that subject, I'm just gonna throw my opinion out there while we're talking about budget. Manhole repair, I'd like to get an analysis from our guys of how many of them need to be done and work on that, cause I don't wanna have an issue like SAC had. And then this Omni beacon alarm notification, that's 2,000, that does how many of them? 2 of them? I'd like to see us really concentrate on at least doing all of them around the lake. To save on our guys' time, that can be better utilized somewhere else. Is my theory behind that. That's just my 2 cents worth, talking about the budget.
so on here, how many hydrants were you talking about total?
Well, it's on the back. Last page.
So needs work, 8 of them?
8 of them
So
that
we
need
have-
work, so they're the ones that need work are less than the 300 gallons per minute. These are less than 300 gallons per minute, these are less than 400 gallons per minute, these are less than 500 gallons per minute.
Okay,
And they're all highlighted, color coded for you.
so we need to do those 8 for sure.
I would say we need to do the first
Yeah.
10,
10. So on here,
and then keep it going next year, updating the other ones. And I'm assuming our staff does hydrant replacements?
We would if we're replacing the hydrant. When they did those last year, they were able to repair some, which proved to be a good way to go then too. So.
Okay.
And we had a contractor come in to do the repair.
so that probably,
So if we did some last year, do we know which ones we did?
We do.
Brian knows, he was there with, this Chris
Okay.
that came and did it.
We pulled the invoice, Dean, we looked at that, they were
Yeah.
identified. Yeah, we can
So can you take that list that I gave you and identify them so we can see which ones it is for moving forward? Does that make
Yep.
sense?
Yeah, sure can.
so that would need to be bumped up just a little bit,
Right, yep, so,
12 to 15 or something.
yeah, I'd be looking at about 15,000. And again, a lot of that funds, I think, can come from ARPA money.
So we did do some last year.
We did,
Some
they
things-
were repaired.
How many do you think got about?
I think it was like 4 that we repaired.
And is it, so that repair that we did 4, do you remember what the bill was when we got done? Was it $5,000?
No, it wasn't that
Okay.
much.
So if we don't use it all, then
Right.
bonus, then each council member gets a bonus.
Oh, is that the deal? We keep doing more hydrants.
Take me out for lunch more than.
I like Dave's idea.
There you go.
No, but seriously, I mean, at least the 5,000 for 4 of them is a realistic number. is what I
Oh, yeah,
get.
absolutely, yeah, it sure is. You know, and really, and this is, I guess, past couple of years, you know, you'd be able to buy a hydrant, it'd be $1,500 to buy a hydrant.
Right, so,
Can you get them?
But, and I haven't priced any here this year, I don't know what they are.
Well, like you said, that's important.
Yeah, we'll get that, can I say the new number, probably gonna be 15,000.
I mean, this is just my opinion, it's the council's decision, I'm just throwing my 2 cents out there right now. Cause we gotta start narrowing some of this stuff down, correct?
We do, we're gonna get to the end of the big picture here, and I'll show you where we are certainly short on some things. So just flipping to page 39, this is just an FYI for you on transfers. So we do transfer around money a lot, like
Too much.
you can only pay debt service out of the debt service fund, so you gotta transfer money in there, okay? And when we transfer money to the capital projects fund, and we would pay for capital projects out of that fund. So, just to show you that there's $1.2 million worth of transfers, and as you look at the total budget then, and you're gonna say we got a $9 million budget, that includes $1.2 million of transfers. So you take that amount off because it basically shows in the budget twice. But, so, as you flip to the next page 40, this is the big picture then, where you're comparing revenues against expenditures for each fund. Starting off at the top, general fund, we would have $1.17 million worth of projected revenues coming in, okay, $1.296 million worth of expenditures. So it does show us having a deficit spending of over $125,000. Well, that's about the exact amount of the street project then at Outlot 20. So we would be transferring some additional money to pay off additional street expenses that way. Road use tax, again, having a deficit spending on that also, but we would anticipate that because we're only doing a project every couple of years. Sales tax, it brings in about $134,000 worth of revenue, and we would propose expenses of $93,000. Okay, that TIF shows that debt there. It shows the debt and the and that pressure system, so those numbers would all change. Hotel motel, we do bring in about $50,000, and this would propose expenses of $45,000. Special assessments, again, that's basically a wash. The money comes in, we turn around and pay that out for debt service then. Same thing done on debt service, the amount that comes in goes out. Then you look at the capital projects. So just looking at that entire middle section there, you see we have $2.03 million worth of revenue coming in to the capital projects fund, $2.26 million of expenses going out. Streets, look, just working from the top again, that the streets have $85,000 deficit spending. Again, we're doing a larger project, so we're spending funds that were saved. Doing the street at Outlot 20. Planning funds is just some miscellaneous planning funds that comes in. Community center would be a wash in and out. The Evaco Phase 2, showing those revenues coming in from grant and the amount paid out. That's actually just the amount of grant there, the remainder of it to be paid from TIF.
So the grant's 418?
Yeah. Fire bus, again, just if that would come to be, we would look at expending that out of the capital projects fund. Pickleball court, same deal, where we're looking at revenues would be that additional grant, assuming that comes in, and the expenditures of $75,000 there. Now there's another $25,000 that's expended out of sales tax.
So that revenue for the pickleball court, we got 50,000, is that 2 grants that we're getting at?
That way.
Or is 25 of that, what we've already committed out of this year, but?
Here.
Okay.
So, the expense side of things would be $50,000 of new grant, and then $25,000 where we've been awarded from Sac County Endowment, and the city's put in $25,000. Okay, that 25 the city's put in comes from sales tax, so it doesn't show in the capital improvements area. generators, that economic development is the, business development grant. Okay, looping the water main, planning on doing that project. Okay, this deal on water tower.
So that that 25, on the economic development, that 25,000 is coming in from somewhere else.
That is being, yeah, that's being transferred in from hotel motel. The funds actually come from hotel motel.
Okay, so we have 50,000 that we get from hotel motel, and that 45,000 expenditure is 25 of that is going back down to this economic development.
Yep. I just comment on the one that's marked water tower, that's all revenue coming in. What we have historically done is we would earmark all of the funds that we get from that cell tower that's up there. They pay us a monthly rental fee, and it ends up being about that $7,800 that we have put into a water tower maintenance fund. And it helps with cleaning and the periodic painting of the water tower. Transfer to sewer, that's that money that we had in place already about expending that towards that retainage for the lagoon project. Okay, and then we do show some funds just being transferred. 20,000 to the sewer plant demo fund, 40,000 to the street sweeper fund. Okay, and then the general fund is general fund, public works, electric. Those are all the capital funds that we transfer funds into and then purchase equipment out of. And then also would propose to start funding a basket truck fund. Okay. On water, you see that in this, the way this draft is shown, the expenses exceed revenues by about $22,000. That's concerning. In the sewer fund, expenses exceed revenues by about $13,000. Again, concerning. The electric fund, expenses exceed revenues by about $165,000. That is not something that I see changing here in the near future either, because our wholesale power costs have gone up. Wholesale power costs are up somewhere around 12%. And that is basically the amount of that increase there deals with wholesale power costs. Garbage is in the hole a little bit this year because we would buy garbage bags out of that fund. And then you see the balances then for sinking funds there at the bottom. Looking at the grade line clear at the bottom, about $8.3 million worth of revenue citywide, $9.04 million worth of expenses. So then, one more page. Page 41 is you look at the fund balances then. Okay, so we'll walk down this where the top line there is the beginning balance of that fund as of July 1st of this year. Okay, then what I've done for budget purposes is to re-estimate revenues, re-estimate expenses, so the budget numbers give a very accurate example of what would be anticipated for the remainder of this year. So those are very accurate then about what we would expect for revenues and expenses. So you figure the ending balance then as of June 30 of 22, which then rolls to be the new beginning balance as of 7/1 of 22. And then you take the projected revenues and projected expenses out of this draft budget. And then when you get to the grade lines there, that's the projected ending fund balance then as of June 30th of 23. So like we were talking about, the fund balance of the general fund would be $589,000.
So is that 589,000 all them lines added together? On the bottom that's in gray?
Yeah, really, no, that's.
Each one of these are a separate.
It's a separate fund.
So do you have the totals?
Not on this sheet, I sure. have the totals, yes, but just it didn't show it.
Well, because I think that would be, without me doing a lot of math.
That one includes a lot of math.
Well, yeah, well, you got it on a spreadsheet, right?
I sure do.
So that'd make it a lot easier for you to get us the totals.
Yep. I can, and I can and I certainly will. It's, as you take a look at the fund balance for each of the funds, it's, I think just shows the real important total for each one of the funds. To know that, for the most part, you know, we're not proposing anything to be deficit. Now we'll get to that at the bottom line here in a second. But water utility, we very rarely keep a significant fund balance in that, but it's going down again this year, so it would be at 24,000. Sewer utility at 196,000, but the amount of funds that go through there, that's not a significant fund balance. And then the one of concern is the electric department. Look at the top of that column there, where at the beginning balance of this year was 630, and at the end of next year is supposed to be 179.
Is that because we're paying too much out of our electric fund
It's,
for other stuff?
it just doesn't, not that that doesn't happen, because it sure does, Bill, but not, large projects aren't paid out of the electric fund, you know, for community improvements like they used to be. This has everything to do with electric projects and then wholesale power costs,
And which went up, what'd you say?
about 12%.
12%.
We tripled what we put in the ground this year.
It was
Typical
a
years.
huge year for this.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the next year too, where it goes down.
It's concerning.
Well, you know, we paid for some wire and conduit just because we was having so much trouble getting it this past year that I have on hand, so that will help towards our projects, you know, this physical year. Knowing that we have that
Our
cable,
inventory level.
that cable, you know,
Once you use it, you gotta blow it up again.
depends how many more projects come down the pipe.
6.
Depends on supply and demand too.
Right, what you can and can't get. And right now, wire is expensive.
Couple things of note that we need to address, and those are on the bottom row there about the street funds. Even transferring money from the general fund like was proposed, the projected ending fund balance of next year is still negative. So that's to the point where you wanna take a look at either what you wanna do for a street project, or we'd look at transferring more money likely from the general fund. And the other one that's negative yet is the general capital improvements. And it's expending a lot this year because we're purchasing that police vehicle.
Have we been when that's coming yet?
What's the timeline on that there, chief?
Next month. Fingers crossed.
Okay.
February.
So I do still need to, you know, we can't end the year negative. So we'll look at some changes to transfer more money into these capital funds.
I'm gonna hold my breath.
For it to come in?
Yes.
The other one that I noticed that I sure do need to make a change is public works capital for the projected expenses for this year does not include, that's the budget amount for this year, but then we purchased tobacco. So where it says 5,000, that'll change to 75,000. But we do have the funds available to pay that. So that's kind of big picture on the budget. And I know we certainly have major changes on the TIF and the pressure system. And then I got several other notes in here about other smaller things that we were looking at. And then, of course, that didn't include anything in regards to housing development. Any other questions or comments about the big picture or anything specific? the one action that I would ask of the council tonight is to pass that resolution about the maximum property tax rate. What's your input about what we should have for a property tax asking? $24.
Property tax.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I'm thinking 2%.
Yeah.
I just, I hate to raise it,
I'll
but
make that motion.
Second.
So that's a motion to approve that resolution with the 2%?
Yeah, that's the middle one we're talking about, general fund dollars
Yeah.
increased by 2%. That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, so, you
We'll
know,
go from 622 to 635. Right?
yes,
Yeah.
yep, yep. And then,
And
the
yet-
really good news about that is the property tax levy goes down.
Correct.
Okay, so it goes down 66 cents, so.
That's the motion I'm making.
Roll call.
Okay, Beckman,
Yes.
Boltman,
Yes.
Stankin,
Yes.
Mulder,
Yes.
Frank. All right,
Ready for the closed session?
we are. Now, I guess next steps on the budget is that I will get those changes made, and there's a lot of changes then to be made, especially with Deb. But we'll get those changes made.
but we're not exactly ruling out that pressure system yet either.
No, of course, it's still there.
Yeah, I mean, well,
You know, and that's the other thing, is we budget for these things to happen in anticipation that they will. But if you decide later on that you want it to happen, it can still happen, you just amend the budget.
So if we do the loop, we might figure out through our volume will increase.
Well, I think we do the loop first, and then we evaluate the situation, unless our engineering group says, the volume's there, just don't have the pressure. Does that make sense? Am I saying that the right way?
Yeah.
And I didn't see the engineer's study, so we'd have to look at it.
I'll get that for everybody. It's,
When do we have to do the final stuff on this budget stuff?
we will set the public hearing date for the budget on the public hearing date of the taxes, which was
February 20th,
February 21st.
Okay.
7th, February.
No, I think it's 21st.
Oh, yeah, it is 21st.
So in reality, we gotta go through this stage one of our budget stuff and start trimming some stuff.
Well,
In reality,
I would-
because we've got two development things,
yeah. It's,
and then I would also like to know for us, I don't know where the numbers that you're using for the electric and stuff out at Hankey and at Lakewood Partners, we talked to them, and out lot 20, unless we've got all the stuff bought for that. How much is that stuff gone up, or is them numbers accurate? Follow what I'm saying?
yeah, it shows in our budget twofold. That when you look at the project cost, and this would be, I think it's in our underground replacement line item, that's the labor to do it. And we use the same per unit cost as what we had this year, and it won't be too much different next year. We feel pretty good about that.
Because the cost of wire has skyrocketed.
Yeah, so that's the labor side of thing. The purchasing the inventory will be significant again, but like Jeff was saying, we have wire on hand to do those projects now. It would just
We have
be
enough wire to do all three of them?
I'll bet we
two
close.
of them.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I don't know until I actually have footages, but
Right, because this one's not all done, correct?
no.
The landing. So we actually would have four.
No. And the landing, one thing with landing, I don't plan on pulling any full three-phase stuff in there, it'll be all single-phase, so that's two extra runs of cable and pipe that you're not doing. And when you look at those other development areas now, Hankey's, the way that lays out, you may be doing three-phase there for the fact of getting each transformer's on a different phase because
Right.
you're a bigger area. So, and I don't see a lot of footage, as far as primary footage, in the outlot 20 either. Cause you're talking looking at a block to get,
Will you go on the front side of them homes, or will you come around the back side of them homes?
I'm anticipating to come from the sectional cabinet right off of, the Hanson Street Road along that and go straight north and then try to just branch down into there,
Hanson Street Road.
which is the dirt road going to the
Like
shop.
Brad Bachman's?
Huh?
Oh, you mean for outlet
Out down
20.
here.
I'm sorry,
That's
yeah.
what you asked
I'm
about.
on the wrong place,
He's talking in Lakewood.
yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Oh, now on Linens, I'm looking at probably coming back. It used to be Virgil Fowler's place. There's a three-phase sectional cabinet there. And coming into that area to feed that. There again, I just roughly did out there and it was 400 or 500 feet, you know, with one phase, so.
I guess my question is, and back to, if we don't have enough wire on hand, what's it costing us for these? And plus, we gotta keep wire on hand for emergency
You never know.
situation.
According to my brother, it's up anywhere between 18 to 25%.
From what time frame?
What time frame? What do you mean, when it's gonna?
No, from 18 to 25% up from when? Up 18 to 25%.
This year or last year?
Just over this last year.
On the cost of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that,
Yeah.
cause I've heard up to 30%, so.
See, and I'm thinking that's a low number, but from 2 years ago anyway.
I know for a fact that, probably a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago, 4-aught triplex is what we pretty much run to a home from either the transformer or these handholds. That cable was $1.80 a foot, it is now $2.80 a foot, and it's supposed to take another price increase after the first of the year.
Can you get it?
That's getting tough. I actually just ordered another reel just because I could get it. And ain't so sure I shouldn't order two, but I didn't wanna, you know, we're still in last year's budget, so. You know, where do you jump over to the other budget to help pay for this, you know? Especially with buying 3 times of what we normally do already on this year's budget.
It's just an odd year circumstance. Gotta do what you gotta do. It's a
Good year for me to get my feet wet, I
There
guess,
you
huh?
go. You're doing just great. We're done.
I am,
We
yeah,
need a
you
motion to go
betcha.
into closed session.
I will make that motion.
Second,
Second.
roll call. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
Okay, Frank, hey Brandon. Look around, just one second.
Yes.
Walton?
See you, Dean.
See you.